Grandma snapped. It's what's good for you that counts. From now on, you must eat cabbage 3 times a day. Mountains of cabbage. And if it's got caterpillars in it, so much the better. Ah, said George. Oh, Mummy washes caterpillars down the sink. Yeah, well, Mummy's as stupid as you are, said Grandma. Cabbage doesn't taste of anything without a few boiled caterpillars in it. Slugs, too. Not slugs, George cried out. I couldn't eat slugs. Grandma squeezed her lips together tight so her mouth became a tiny wrinkled hole. Ooh, whenever I see a live slug on a piece of lettuce, I gobble it up quick before it crawls away. Delish us! Worms and slugs and beetly bugs. You don't know what's good for you. You're joking, Grandma. I never joke, she said. Beetles are perhaps the best of all. Well, they go crunch. Just imagine it. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a beetle inside the stem of a stick of celery. Sometimes it's earwigs. A big fat earwig is very tasty. But you gotta be very quick, my dear, when you put one of those in your mouth. It's got a sharp pair of nippers on its back end, and if it grabs your tongue with those, it never lets go. So you gotta bite the earwig first. Chop, chop, before it bites you. George started edging towards the door. He wanted to get as far away as possible from this filthy old woman. You're trying to get away from me, aren't you? She said, pointing her finger straight at George's face. You're trying to get away from Grandma. Could it be, George wondered, that she was a witch? He'd always thought witches were only in fairy tales, but now he wasn't so sure. Come closer to me, little boy, she said, beckoning to him with a horny finger. Come closer to me, and I will tell you secrets. Well, George didn't move. Grandma didn't move either. I know a great many secrets, she said. Her smile was thin and icy, the kind of smile a snake might make just before it bites you. George took a step backwards, edging closer to the door. You mustn't be frightened of your old grandma, she said, and leaned forward in her chair, whispering in a throaty sort of voice George had never heard her use before. Some of us have magic powers that can twist the creatures of this earth into wondrous shapes. A tingle of electricity flashed down the length of George's spine. He began to feel really frightened. Grandma went on. Some of us have fire in our tongues and sparks in our bellies and wizardry in the tips of our fingers. Some of us know secrets that would make your hair stand straight up on end and your eyes pop out of their sockets. George began to tremble. He wanted to run away, but his feet were stuck to the floor. We know how to make your nails drop off and teeth grow out of your fingers instead. We know how to make you wake up in the morning with a long tail coming out from behind you. We know secrets, my dear, about dark places where dark things live and squish and slither all over each other. Grandma, cried out George, stop! And he made a dive for the door. Doesn't matter how far you run, he heard her saying. You won't ever get away. George ran into the kitchen, slamming the door behind him. He was shaking a little. He really hated that horrid old witchy woman. And all of a sudden he had a tremendous urge to do something about her, something whopping, something absolutely terrific, a real shocker, a sort of explosion. He wanted to blow away the witchy smell that hung around her in the next room. He may have only been 8 years old, but he was a brave little boy. He was ready to take this woman on. I'm not going to be frightened by her, he said softly to himself. But he was frightened. And that's why he wanted suddenly to explode her away. Well, not quite away, but he did want to shake her up a bit. So what should it be, this whopping, terrific, exploding shocker for Grandma? George sat and thought for a while. He'd have liked to have put a banger under her chair. But he didn't have one. He would have liked to have put a long green snake down the back of her dress. But he didn't have a long green snake. He would have liked to put 6 big black rats in the room with her and lock the door. But he didn't have 6 big black rats. And as George sat there, pondering this interesting problem, his eye fell upon the bottle of Grandma's brown medicine standing on the sideboard. Rotten stuff it seemed to be. 4 times a day, a large spoonful of it was shoveled into her mouth, and it didn't do her the slightest bit of good. She was always just as horrid after she'd had it as she'd been before. And the whole point of medicine, surely, was to make a person better. If it didn't do that, it was quite useless. Aha! Thought George suddenly. I know exactly what I shall do. I shall make her a new medicine. One that's so strong and so fierce and so fantastic that it'll either cure her completely or blow off the top of her head. I'll make her a magic medicine. A medicine no doctor in the world has ever made before. George looked at the kitchen clock. It said 10:05. There was nearly an hour left before Grandma's next dose was due.